I almost checked my screen to see what time it was, to see how long our meditation was going. Thank you for sharing that, and it made me reflect on my Thanksgiving. When I arrived at my grandparents', the first thing I did was go sit on the couch around the television, and that's where we sat while we ate and discussed things. So good morning once again. Today we are continuing our worship series where we are redefining love. As Unitarian Universalists, we are a set of diverse individuals with many differing opinions. Not only should we expect disagreement and dissent to be a par for our course, but we should recognize it as a necessary piece of a diverse community. Disagreement is not only natural, it is needed and healthy. If we do not have it, then we risk creating an echo chamber filled with shallow validation, self-indulgent rants, and spiritual stagnation. So knowing that we need diverse opinions, diverse thoughts, and diverse values to further our growth, we must create a community that can celebrate the areas we are divided in, yet remain united. Unlike many other faith traditions, we don't have one God or a higher power to unite us. We don't have a universal afterlife to strive for or a universal creed that we all follow. So how do we stay united on our journey to be transformed into beloved community? Our predecessors had an idea, and I think it's a pretty good one. Covenant. A sacred agreement, a set of promises that we strive to live by, promises that direct us in our relationships with each other. The Reverend Victoria E. Safford of the White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church reminds us that a covenant is not a contract. It is not made and signed and sealed once and for all, sent to the attorneys for safekeeping or guarded under glass in a museum. A covenant is not a static artifact. It is not a sworn oath, whereas, therefore I will do this or I'll die, so help me God. A covenant is a living, breathing aspiration made new every day. As a Unitarian Universalist church, we have chosen to be in covenant with other UU churches. This covenant can be found in the Unitarian Universalist Association Bylaws, Article 2, Section C 2.1, and it reads, "We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning. The right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. The goal of a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. And respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. The living tradition which we share draws from many sources. Direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Words and deeds of prophetic people which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Wisdom from the world's religions which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life. Jewish and Christian teachings which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. Humanist teachings which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science, and warn us against idolatries of the mind and spirit. spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. Grateful for the religious pluralism which enriches and ennobles our faith, we are inspired to deepen our understanding and expand our vision. As free congregations, we enter into this covenant, promising to one another our mutual trust and support. This is beautiful, and most certainly at the core of our corporate identity as a UU church and our religious identity as Unitarian Universalists. It is in this covenant that we promise to live our UU principles as best as we can, as an institution and as individuals. These promises keep us united with other UU churches and with our faith. Covenant is at the heart of our faith, and as such should be at the heart of our community. Which brings me to the next key piece in creating a community that both invites division and walks in unity: our congregational covenant. Our congregational covenant is the compass that allows us to navigate the turbulent waters of disagreement and still reach our goal of living as a beloved community. Our congregational covenant is a set of promises that should guide our actions in all affairs concerning our church family. If our congregational covenant is so essential to our existence, it is not surprising that we talk about it as often as we do. It's posted all around the church. We read it before all our meetings. We recite it every Sunday. Wait, we don't do any of that. In fact, if I were a betting man, I'd bet a good portion of the members in this room don't even know what our covenant is. Not that long ago, I had a longtime member share with me that she didn't even know we had a covenant. And she was here when the covenant was adopted. We had a great discussion about it and some wonderful laughs. I cherish that conversation. I imagine that our younger children probably know their covenant better than us adults. In our children's chapel, the Water Village, it's as follows. We promise to try our best and participate. We promise to respect each other, keeping our hands to ourselves and listening with our eyes and ears. We promise to have fun. Simple, important, and we go over it every Sunday. If covenant is so important and we go over it every week with our kids, what kind of message does it send when we don't do the same as adults? The congregation is the curriculum, my friends. Our children are learning from us. They see how we live, how we worship, how we church, and they're going to grow up to do the same. I want our children to grow up understanding that we can have united community while maintaining space for division and disagreement. I want our children to grow up knowing that covenant is a sacred practice that we can use to achieve such a community. I want to be in a community that practices its covenant. So today, we're going to look at our congregational covenant. As members of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Jacksonville, in order to nurture and enhance our lives together in this sacred space, where we seek personal growth, discern life's meaning, and build relationships of fairness and love, we intend to offer our unique gifts, talents, time, energy, and financial support, respect the views and needs of others, practicing tolerance, understanding, and acceptance, even in disagreement, allowing loving relationship to transcend issues, celebrate the diversity within our midst, even when it is difficult or uncomfortable, invite and welcome others in the quest for spiritual and ethical growth, recognizing each other and guests in fellowship. Share the ministry of our church, caring for each other through times of joy and sorrow. This is a beautiful set of promises, with such great meaning and intent. This beautiful document is laying out how we agree to interact with one another, how we agree to treat each other. A sacred agreement that all members of this church have agreed is valuable and have agreed to follow. I know that many of us do our very best to live some of those promises on a regular basis with our church family. Even without placing the covenant at the center of our church life, I bet some of these just come naturally and are easy. I bet each of us have varying levels of practice and competence with those promises, and I bet each of us struggles with one or two of them. I know I do. We are human. We're fallible. When someone breaks those promises or hurts someone here, we may not have a book to throw at them or a hell to damn them to. We have a covenant. We may be tempted to take that covenant and wield it like a club of condemnation. We can condemn them to being wrong, bad, or evil. That's exactly how a weaponized covenant works. I don't say much with certainty, but I will say this with absolute certainty. That's exactly the wrong way to use a covenant. Our covenant is not a weapon. If we're to create a community where we can safely disagree, we cannot allow for our covenant to be weaponized. Our covenant is the compass that helps us navigate these tough waters with love. In fact, our predecessors put it right there in the covenant how to do this. Respect the views and needs of others, practicing tolerance, understanding, and acceptance, even in disagreement, allowing loving relationship to transcend issues. Throwing the book at someone or beating them with a club is not loving. Condemning someone is not loving. When we condemn someone, it's not out of love, for it greatens the divide between us. It separates us. It does not help heal the damage or bring us into a healthy relationship. Oftentimes, it destroys the relationship as it is and ruins any chance for a future relationship. It enables us to label the other person as an other or as not worthy. Now, on the flip side of that, if we do not hold each other accountable to our covenant, if we are uncomfortable about telling someone they have misstepped, if we are worried about how we will be viewed for bringing it up, if we let ourselves be controlled by a culture of niceness, then we are saying that we do not believe we are capable of doing better when we fail. In doing this, we are doing a disservice to ourselves and our church family. It is much easier to simply write something off and excuse a behavior than it is to tell someone their behavior was wrong and unacceptable in this community. This is not healing a divide. This is not building a bridge. That's hiding something that needs to be addressed. Excusing unacceptable behaviors empowers abusers and is not living in covenant. If we do not have conviction with our values and covenant, then they mean nothing. So what can we do when one of us breaks covenant in our relations with one another? Well, rather than calling someone out, we can call them in. Instead of highlighting their mistake as utter failure and a reflection of who they are, we can show them that they have acted out of our covenant and that there is a path back to come into it. We speak to them in love rather than condemnation. We get honest with them. We see this temporary division as an opportunity for growth, as an opportunity for the relationship to evolve. Sometimes this will be simple. Sometimes someone steps out of covenant and they really just needed a friend or a church family member to be like, hey, I think maybe we're out of covenant here, They look at it and they can apologize or restore any damage that was done quickly and easily. Other times, this can be complicated and difficult. We can be complicated and difficult. First off, for a covenant to work at all, in my experience, we have to practice some humility. We have to be humble and open-minded. We must be open to the idea that we are capable of making a mistake and breaking our covenant, every single one of us. None of us is above that. We have to practice honesty, and when someone has hurt us or broken covenant, we must find the willingness to honestly tell them. And sometimes we just have to have faith that they are capable of listening to us with an open mind and just may not have realized the impact their actions have had. We may also need to practice some acceptance. Just because we tell them how we feel does not mean that they will recognize the impact their actions had. And either way, we need to remember there is recourse available. We have a right relations committee, we have a minister, we have friends and church family. They can all help. After all parties involved have acknowledged that there may be a break of covenant, the next step is to listen to each other. Not just hear each other out, but really listen, like we practice in our chalice circles. We need to focus on what the other person is telling us and how they're feeling, not the solutions we have for it or our defense or reasoning behind why we did the things we did. Just listen. Put the screens down and just listen. After we listen to them, we can take some time to repeat back to them what they said to us in our own words. That way we can make it clear that we understood them. If we need clarity, we can ask. If we miss something, they can tell us. At this point, we should have a pretty clear understanding of what happened, or at least how all parties feel things happened. And once there's that understanding, we can start looking at restoring the relationship, restoring the damage that may have been done. If only one person's at a covenant here, it's pretty simple. They think of ways to restore the damage that was done. It's like restorative justice. They focus on making amends, which could be actions taken immediately or perhaps changing a behavior moving forward. The victim or victims or affected parties, they're the ones who get to decide if the damage has been properly restored. And then they offer grace and forgiveness when they're ready. We offer grace and we forgive when we're ready and we move forward. What I mean by that is we don't tell someone it's enough and then secretly hold resentment towards them. We have to be honest here. We have to be true to ourselves and each other. Resentments are a spiritual infection that fester and kill relationships. Don't tell them someone you forgive them if you don't. Not that long ago, the youth and I discussed this topic, and we outlined some steps to bring someone back into the covenant. I just told you, but we have a fun little acronym for this process. ALUR, or as the kids might say, allure. It's fun to say. You can try it, right? All right. Allure. Allure. There you go. Try it. It's like a meme or something. I don't know. It's simple. We acknowledge that we're out of covenant, or at the very least that someone's been hurt, and we might be out of covenant. We listen, right? Listen to the hurt party or parties. You, understanding. We come to an understanding of what has happened and the damage that has occurred. And then we restore. We take steps to restore that damage. It's really simple. These steps are a simple tool that can help us in living in our covenant. And if these don't work, or perhaps the issue is emotionally charged, or there's some serious trauma happening, we can always go to our right relations committee or our minister. Sometimes we need help from someone outside of the situation, and there is nothing wrong with this. It is wrong to ignore it when we break covenant. It's wrong to pretend that everything is okay when it's not. Love does not hide shortcomings. When we do that, we rob each other of opportunities for growth. We rob our relationships the opportunity to evolve. Our community is a diverse one. It has many different opinions, and there are controversies. Our community needs disagreement and dissent. Our faith is built for this experience and to celebrate it. Unitarian Universalism is a faith that requires us to live in the tension between division and unity, the tension between the individual and the collective, the tension between belief and fact. This is a hard place to live, and it will strain our relationships. Our predecessors knew this and created a tool to help us in our journey together. Let us not forget the promises of our covenant. Let's put our covenant at the center of our community. Let us be humble, open to growth, and willing to allow loving relationships to transcend the personal issues. Love does not delight in condemnation, but rejoices in restoration. Blessed be.